example of a power automate, all right, and what you can do with it. So, so I'm actually in an environment here. So what happens is you would come in, and it's still called a flow, although they changed the name to power automate. I like flow better, because even the terminology was better. I'm going to create a flow. So now I'm going to create a power automate. The reason they renamed it, they had some logic around renaming it, because it's not just flows, it's also used to do interactions with other things. You can see there's an AI builder in there, so you can include concept like artificial intelligence components in your flow as well. The flow we're going to look at is something that I think a couple things I think everybody can relate to. So one here is an order that requires special pricing approval. So this particular customer, they have reps out in the field. They're using D365, but it's the same thing. It's all Power Apps. So they have their user out in the field. They're taking orders from customers, and then they will, when they place the order, they can adjust the pricing, right? And the idea is if they adjust that pricing out of a certain level of tolerance, then it's supposed to send the order to a manager to review and approve it before it's okay to process that order. Right, so the idea is that we're looking at an order, we're looking at the pricing that the reps changed the order to, right? So we got to compare that price to the actual normal price for the item. There's a comparison of that to make sure it's not out of a particular percentage range. And then if it is, what we do is we put a hold on the order, and we put a status of it pending approval, and then we send an email out to the person who has to approve it, and then they can approve it right within the email itself, actually. Well, I think in this case they can't, but that normally you can, it's just because of this particular implementation. But with that workflow in most cases, if you're using Office 365, which makes a lot of sense, typically if you're using this, you're using Office 365. Just pick the customers not, they're using, I think, Gmail. So they had some limitations in that they couldn't approve the email inside the email. So, but if you could, there'd be a button there, you click on it, and you can approve it without actually even having to go back into the backend app. So that's the scenario. So what you do is you would come in, you create a new flow. I'm just going to go right into edit, and I'll sort of walk you through the bits of it. So when you create a flow, you always start with a trigger action. And you have to say, well, what causes this thing to actually run? And it could be something that changes in the data, which is what happens in this case. You can see there when the record is updated. So when the order is updated is when this flow runs, okay? But it could be manually triggered as well. You could have a manual trigger on it, which means that your user would somebody would say run this flow. They have a button somewhere. They click the button and it fires the flow, right? So there has to be something that spawns it. In this case, we said when the record is updated. And if I click on that, it says what environment. You'll notice up here, I'm in their live environment actually right now. So, but I'm not going to change anything. But if you have a test environment, you can switch between the test and the live, right? So you can have as many environments in there as you want, within certain limitations around sizing and stuff like that. Then there's, so we're saying when the order is changed, and then down here, there's a field we put on here. So what we're looking for specifically is not only that the order was updated, but that this field was changed. So if they've updated the order and this field changed, then we're going to run this flow. Make sense? Then the next three actions are we're just creating some variables. So it's kind of like programming, right? You're creating a variable, you're giving it a name, because we're going to store something in this variable. But we're not writing code. This is all, right? And you can, and the nice thing I like it is visually represented. You can see the flow, how it works. So we have a variable I'm just calling the base book name. And we have a variable called base price, and then there's another one called the price table, and it's an array. All right, so we're actually storing a bunch of values in this variable. Then the next thing we do is we're checking a condition here. We're checking to see if this submit ready to process is yes, and we're checking to see if this field called approval required is yes. So the number you're seeing on the right, that 81061 whatever, that means yes. Okay, because in the Power App, what it stores in the database is that number, but you usually see a yes or a no. So it'd be nice if they let you put yes in there, but I guess we'll get there. Okay. Now when you're editing these things, like if I click in here, it will pop up a window, right? And you can actually go and select the variables or field names or things like out of that box to put into that field. So it sort of helps you out. Now, if the condition is true, it's going to go here, yes. And if the condition is not true, it goes here, no, and it does nothing because there's nothing in there. Okay? So now, what I'm doing in this flow is, remember I have an order, it's got one or more items on it where the sales rep has changed the pricing. So all the ones where he's changed the pricing, I'm going to compare. I need to go and get that item out of the normal price book and look at the price that's the normal sales price and do that comparison and make sure it's in tolerance. Right? So I'm going to go to the CDS, get the account, right? Because I have an order. The order would have an account number on it, but I want other information from the account, like the account name, right? Who's the customer name? So I'm going to go get the account. So what this is saying is go and get the account entity where the item is equal to the account. Like, so the order has an account field in it, right? Remember the trigger action? No, sorry, the trigger action's on the order. The order obviously has an account number field on it. So I'm using that account number field, and I'm putting it in here to go get the account record. Now I have access to every field that's in the account record, which would include things like their credit limit, their account name, their address, their phone number, email address, whatever, right? Whatever's on the header, whatever's in that record. The other thing I'm doing is getting the owner of the record. So there's an owner ID on the order. That's the rep who created the order. But what's in there is a reference to the rep, not their name. I want to get their name and their email address because we want to send them an email. Right? So I'm going to go get the owner record. So that's another record in the CDS. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is go get the book name. All right. So in the order, they've picked some pricing. Okay. This is the base book name. No, so there's a setting in the system where they specify what their base price book is. So it's going to that setting, retrieving the value of that price book. So it knows what price book to go look into to get the base prices out. Then what it does is it goes through all of the items that are on the order and it compares each one to the base pricing. Okay, I mean, there's more detail in here we can get into. Right? It does this for every order line. So it goes and gets all the order lines, then what it does is for each order line, it gets the item, it gets the price sheet, it looks at the price that's in the base price, does a comparison, and then it appends it to that array variable. And then at the end here, what we do is we create this HTML table. It's pretty simple. We just pass it the name of that variable that we created for the price table, and it just basically formats it into a table for us. All right, and then this compose argument just formats it, basically completes that formatting. And then the last thing we do is we send an email out. So it goes out to these individuals, and then we've composed an email here, but in the body of the email you can see we have fields, right? It's dynamic. So what's going to happen is when this occurs, they're going to get an email that looks something like this. Right, so you're going to get the email with the wording and then the table there that shows the item numbers the rep has changed. So you can see the base price is $27.50 and their special price that they've entered there. Which is kind of an oddball one because the price is double the normal base price. This is probably more likely what the rep would do, would be lower the price, right? From 68 to 59.25. So as the manager now, you're going to look at that and go, am I going to okay this price or not? And that's what that flow does. Questions? Okay, I mean, it's not like, there's still some complexity to it, but it's not programming. Yes?
What's the lookup stuff? Is it like data that's basically data warehouse?
It's this particular example is using the common data service. So you missed, I know you walked in at the break. So with the Power Platform, there is a database that you can use that Microsoft provides. So if you use that, it's a little more seamless because it's already built there, right? You don't have to worry about creating tables and fields. It's all kind of done dynamically, right? So if you're using this is using the CDS, right? And then what you could do is integrate your ERP to the CDS. So you move data back and forth to the CDS. Or you could not use the CDS and you could be pulling this data directly out of a SQL table. Okay? Which brings us to the next example. So the next example, I'll just go to the end result, which is this. So they wanted the ability to generate an email with this statement in it. This is a PDF statement, but this PDF statement is generated from Power Automate completely. Okay, so what happens is the way this functionality works is the rep inside of the application goes send a statement. That's it. And then that will trigger the flow, and the flow will build the statement and send the email to the rep and the customer. Okay. Now the information it's pulling from the statement is all stored. Well, some of it's stored in the CDS, but the bulk of it is stored in their back end, which is Dynamics GP in this case. Okay. So we're pulling all of the financial data directly out of the SQL database that stores it. It could be an Oracle database, it could be whatever, but in this case it's a SQL database. Right, and you can see it. I mean, it's built a complete statement along with totals, aging, and everything. Okay, so we'll just briefly look at that flow. So here it is, customer statement. I'll go in and edit it. So in this case, the trigger says when a record is selected. Now Leanna back there is the genius behind this flow. So what is it? How does that work when a record is selected? What does that mean?
When you select an account, that's
Right.
when you want to start the flow. So
Okay.
start to generate it.
So what are they doing? They're picking an account and then running the flow manually?
Yes, because the statement that would be generated based on an account.
Oh, is that the flow? Like it pops up is that the flow button at the top?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So in this case, what's happening is in the app, there's a button that they pick. They can see, because you can make flows that are visible to the users to just run on demand. So that's one of these. So the user is actually just going to select, there's a button that there says flows, they'll see, send statement, they'll select that, and that will trigger this. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on in this one. We're initializing some variables. We're formatting a whole bunch of numbers, lots of variables. Now here you can see we're interfacing directly with the SQL server. Okay, now that SQL server, what happens is when you're using flows, there's connections behind the flows. So you can't have a flow with no connections. It's not going to get any data or outputs. So normally, like the other flow we looked at, it had only one connection. No, it had two connections. One connection to the CDS, because that's what was pulling data from. Any ideas of where the second connection was to? To Office 365, to email, right? Because it's sending an email up, so that's to connect to the Office service. This one here would have a connection to that on-premise SQL database. Okay? So even though there's a cloud service, it's connected directly to that server to pull data. So obviously there's some authentication and stuff that you have to set up for that to happen. But now we can pull directly out of that, out of the SQL database. So there's a bunch of other logic in here. So what we do is for each of the emails that they've specified in the, who they want to send the statement to, so there's a field in Dynamics GP that says send a statement to these email addresses. Right, so what we do is for each email address in there, we're going to send the statement to those people. Right, and in here we're getting all of the, what is this, documents?
Yeah, would be all the lines basically.
Okay.
In the statement.
All right, so, oh, every line, oh yeah, okay, so all of the lines on that statement, it goes basically into GP and it gets all of the AR transactions, it gets all of them. And then for each one, you're gonna format it and put it and add it to a table, right, that you're gonna put on that PDF document. Okay, so there's some formatting here. And what we're doing here is we're populating a Microsoft Word template from SharePoint.
Yeah.
So the doc template is stored on SharePoint.
Correct.
Okay, so you created that Word template,
Yes.
and then you're using that to populate, and that's what we're generating the PDF from.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then finally, we're going to create a document, and it's creating that document on OneDrive. And then finally, we're sending the email, right, with the attached document. Okay, so I left out some little bits in there, but you can see this is a fairly sophisticated flow. I mean, it's doing a lot of stuff. It's reading quite a bit of data and formatting it. Now, if we go to connectors here, automatically post something on your on your LinkedIn if you wanted to. All right.
Question.
Yes.
The features you were showing before with the quotation, does it allow for signature like a probably electronic?
For a signature, like electronic signature?
Yeah, because I do quotes a lot every day and it's one of the handboard keep back this
Well, what
having to have the head signature and quotes before they go.
Okay, well, if you mean an internal signature on the quote.
So do they have
So that's
to
probably not really electronic signature. See, you need an actual physical, like you need to see the signature, or do you just need somebody to approve it?
Normally a head have to approve any quotes I got. I can do one
Okay,
quote for one.
so you could actually send an email out to that individual where they would have the quote and then they could approve right within the email. Of course, you're gonna have a recording that that individual approved that particular quote.
Okay.
That would accomplish what you want. I have seen scenarios locally that where I think they're misled in the sense that, you know, people have this idea that I need to see a signature, right? If you need that causes complexity internally because, like, you know, how are you going to get somebody to, if you're going to capture a signature, they have to sign somewhere. But the whole point of capturing an electronic signature is not the physical signature. Really, electronic signature, I know even if you're using like VeriSign, it'll show like a signature there, but it's just the graphic representation. It's irrelevant, right? What it's really capturing is the fact that you're using that computer, your IP address, you know, that so it knows you're you, and it's just authenticating that yes, you accepted this document. So generally, when you're looking at like electronic signature, it's really an electronic approval. So you want the system to have a record of who approved it, right? With a degree of accuracy. In other words, you want to be sure that it's that individual. So typically, if you're using Office 365, they're going to be signed. They're going to use their Office 365 credentials. It's what's being used to approve it. So we would record that user approved this on this specific date, and there'd be a record in the audit trail for that. Does that answer your question?
I think so. But
Yeah.
so
I have seen, I know there was one of the, actually was the RHA in Tobago. They asked us to do an electronic approval at one point, and they literally wanted the signature in there.
But currently we do not use electronic signature or quotation, but one of the problems is like, for instance, yesterday I had the option of not having to go to work, the physical building to work. We have multiple locations. I did not go to head office yesterday, but while at another location, I created a lot of quotes yesterday, but I cannot send them to clients yet because my
they're
head
not
have to
approved.
sign them.
But so you've used an electric, so I
Mhm.
like to differentiate between electronic signature,
Mhm.
which is typically external,
Yeah,
and an approval, which is internal. It
yeah.
can be external, but it's a little more, there's a little sort of difference, because an approval internal is somebody is gonna approve your quote. So
Yeah.
if you're using Power Automate for that, for example, then every quote, as you complete each quote,
Mhm.
there might be some criteria on there, like a value or whatever, and then it's just gonna send them an automatic email saying, here's a quote, please approve it. They can approve it, they can review it, approve it right in their email, and then it's gonna update the quote to approved, so now you can send it.
Mhm.
Or it might even automatically send the quote to whoever you're supposed to be sending it to, once it's approved. Now, electronic signature, let's say you are sending a PO, or you're sending a document out to an external party and you want them to sign it.
Mhm.
Usually, to do that type of thing, you're typically using an electronic signature provider, right? Like VeriSign, or there's a few of them. So what happens is that individual is going to create a VeriSign account, right? And when they get the request for electronic signature, they're gonna usually they'll get an email. I get them from Microsoft, and it'll direct them to go and sign. They'll go into that interface and they'll approve. Basically, like it's like approving it, but it's effectively the electronic signature. So VeriSign, being the third party now, records you sending the document, them signing it, and they're basically acting as the verifier that that individual over there is really who they say they are. Right? Because without that middleman, I mean, how would you know?
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure if we go look at the connectors in here, that there's going to be connectors to those signature services, right? Let's see if VeriSign is here. I'm probably just looking for the wrong names, like I probably need to look for the actual. Well, here's sign request, there's something, that might be one of those. But I'm sure there are others in here that are, well, there's Adobe Sign, which is another one of those providers. Looks like VeriSign is not maybe here, but I'm sure there's other ones as well. Okay. So then what'll happen is you could use Power Automate to send to that service and then direct it to who the recipient is, and then you would be using that electronic signature service to process the signature. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, last thing on the Power Automate before we move on. This will be more for the techies in the room, but one of the really cool things, is there any stuff in test?
Yeah, we have some flows and tests. I'm not sure how they will run because of the
It's
data.
okay, they could fail, because I just want to show I just want to show the troubleshooting. So if I go to these flows here, if I share a flow with another user in my environment, then it'll show up under team flows. So you can create a flow and share it with other people. That means that they would typically be other admins, so that they could go and edit it or help manage the flow. This is it. So this in here, will it work?
I don't know if that one will work.
Is there something we can run that
You should probably try approval, one of the approval ones.
that's going to send an email, though, right? Who's going to get this?
It would be on the bottom of it. I can't remember this one. I have to go all the way down to the email part of it. Check.
All right, so there's no recipient, right? Okay, so one of the things you can do with this flow, and you can see how the flow is visually represented, right? It's got like a structure to it. When you go, if you wanted to test the flow, when you go to test it, you can either test it by triggering it manually. So you'll see up the top right, it's decided I'll perform the trigger action. So in the case of the order one we were looking at earlier, right, that would mean you'd have to go in and create like an order and like actually split that field. And then when you did that, it would see that you've done that and it would initiate the test, okay? But the other real cool one is you could select the second one now. There's no data in there, but once you've actually done that once, the next test you do, you can just select the same trigger without actually having to do it again. And then what happens when you run this, I'll just, I don't know if this is gonna work or not, but we'll just run it. Okay, so it's saying here the permissions, okay, we'll go ahead and continue. And once, well, this is who it's gonna go to, right? Why is it doing that? What's the, I guess, so you will actually see it run, right? You can see the boxes and the timers on it and stuff. And if it fails anywhere in there, you'll actually see where in the flow it failed. And it will give you an error, and you can open up these things, right? And see what it's actually doing. Now I'm gonna go kill this flow. If you want to manually stop the flow, you can see here there's a test that's running. And I can open up that, and I can cancel it. Okay, so it's been canceled. But the idea is, you know, a lot of times when you're programming and you get an error, like it's like, where is it? But in here it gives you really, really nice troubleshooting tools. So for each step that executes, you can go in here, like this list records. It could actually, you can download the output there. You will actually see the output. Go back here. So here, this is canceled.
You'll be able to see some of it in the customer statement flow you demoed first.
Yeah.
There's some field runs there.
Download here. So you can see here is the stuff that it pulled. Okay. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Some of them are a little easier to use than this, but at the end of the day, each of the stages that runs, you can go into and see what it's doing there. So you can see here this makes a little more sense. All right. So if there's an error, a lot of times you can go right in, you'll see what the error is, you can see what the data it's trying to retrieve or trying to write back, and then you can, it's fairly straightforward to try to fix what's going on. Okay, so that's power automate. All right, so the next scenario I will show you is one where we had a customer, and what they wanted to do was they have a portal. They're a hardware store. They operate in Curacao, in Bonaire, and I think St. Martin, and they just opened a new store in Barbados called Kuya. Anyway, those guys, they have a portal. They have a portal. So if you're a customer, you go buy hardware there, and you're one of the contractors, then what you want to do is you want to keep track of what stuff you're purchasing and for what projects they belong to, what jobs, right? Because you might be building a house for one guy, and you might be building a part of building over here. So what will happen is you'll go in equipment and you'll pre-buy all of the stuff you need for that particular project, and then you might have contractors coming in to pick up goods, and then you want to track what stuff has been picked up and whatever, and what job it belongs to. Okay, so this scenario is one where they have an ERP system where all of this stuff is occurring. They've got point of sale going on, so you have people walking in the hardware store and buying stuff. And then there's some back-end financial transactions that are occurring, right? They're paying for they might have a line of credit and they make payments and things like that. There might be credits that are issued. So what we wanted to do was provide the ability for those customers to go to a portal and see all of their activity. So this is like a read portal. There's not much they can do to interact. It's not one way they can come in and enter orders, although you can create a portal to do that if you wanted to. But it's got quite a bit of stuff in it. So the first thing is when the customer logs in is they can see in here what their account information is. And they can see what their current credit status is. So I've got a credit limit of $10,000. You know, I've got this much credit left. However, somehow I owe $622,000. So, right, this is just some test data. But and then it also shows the aging broken down. So there's obviously actually it's because that $600,000 is in the future. It's not due yet. It's in the future aging bucket. Okay, and if I had jobs with stuff in them, that would show up down here. They can go in here and actually pull their statement. So the customer, the idea is they would be able to come in here and see each of their statements they would have received in the last months. All right, so they would be able to come in and download that statement and then print it out if they wanted to or see it or whatever. Okay. They would be able to see what jobs they currently have open. So I think there's just 3 of them here. 2 of them are closed, 1 is open. And then we give you a little toggle here if you only want to see open jobs or closed jobs. And if they open up one of these jobs, it gives a similar summary, but for the job. The data is not very good, but it would provide for that job if they had an individual credit limit for the job, and it would see all of the expenditure that they have in that job to date as well. Okay? And then all the transactions for the job would be shown here as well. Let me see if there's another job that has data in it, maybe one of the closed ones. Yeah, this one here at least has some transactions. So you can see this job here, we got 3 invoices and a payment. Okay. The next thing is they would be able to see is orders. So what happens, remember I was saying that the contractor would come in, they might buy a whole bunch of stuff, and then they will take deliveries against that order over time. It could be a physical delivery, like where the hardware store goes and drops it at the work site, or it could be one of the contractors just coming in to pick up some of those goods and walk out the doorway. Either way, they're fulfilling an order that was placed. So if we look here, we can see these different orders and the dates and so on, their balances. So I can open the order and it will show me the order details. So this particular order, here's the date, in February 6, 2019. There was a $30 delivery cost, there's a subtotal, tax, so on, and then it shows me here what they bought. So I bought they bought 100 tiles, right, for $10 each, total of $1,000. Okay. Let's take a look at another one over here. This one here, they bought a little more stuff. So they bought 5 drills and 3 tool sets. And then you can see below here is the shipments that were recorded against those lines. So, right, so we had the order for the 5 and 3, and then we can see that there were 3 different shipments. So they picked up 2 drills, then they picked up the tool sets, and then they picked up the other 3 drills later. Okay, so that's the orders and shipments, and then they have transactions. So this would be the equivalent of their entire AR balance, right? So you have an accounts receivable subledger typically for each of your customers. So what this does is it lets the customer see that information. Right? This helps mitigate some of the problems that we run into with collections, making sure that payments are matched against the right invoices. It just provides transparency. It also helps mitigate call-ins from customers, particularly when you have a lot of them like this around what the current status of their account is. So we can see all of the, if we were at debit memos, invoices, credits, payments, point of sale transactions that occurred, a point of sale return as well. You can see that down there. Now these downloads over here, I don't think it's actually working in this sample environment, but the idea is they wanted to store, they had, every time you transact at the point of sale, you get a receipt, right? So they're gonna store that PDF of that receipt, and then you'll be able to download it off the portal. So you would actually be able to see a physical receipt of the goods that you bought. Kind of redundant, I think, but it was one of the requirements that they had. And then you can drill into any one of these. So if I want to go look at this, and then you can see the job that it belonged to, and I can drill into any one of these transactions. So if I open this invoice, I can see what it's made up of. I'm going to open, I think there's a payment in here somewhere. Well, there's a credit. Let's see what it's credit at. Let's take a look at it. Nothing in there. This one? Yeah, I was going to look at that. Yeah, I don't really have any payment examples here, although there's a PDF here that they can download. The next thing they wanted to do, they wanted to make available was, let's say I want to know when the last time I bought a drill was, as an example, right? I'm the customer, so I can go in and see at the item level everything I've ever bought, everything I've ever purchased. So if I put in, for example, drill here and do a search, so I just put in paint, and I can see I got paint rollers and paint. So I can see when I purchased those items. I can go back from the item to the order that the invoice it came from. And then the last thing is they wanted the ability to share documents with the customers, so they could go into the back end and just put a document up there, and it would just be available for the customer to download here on the portal. And then finally, there's some settings in here. So actually go to this one instead here, authorizations. So the idea is that they would make the portal of, so you have a customer, and we would issue a portal login to the customer, you know, whoever the admin is, probably the owner or whatever, one of the more, you know, somebody in the accounting department, we get a login to the portal. So you're gonna get an email that says, hey, here's your login, and you would go sign in, you put your password in, we send an email to verify their email, that the email address is valid and stuff like that. Now, once they have a user, what they wanted to be able to do is we don't want to just have one user, right? I have contractors that are showing up to pick up goods. I may have people in my accounting department that I need to log in here and see this stuff. So what we wanted was the ability for that admin user at the customer level to create other accounts within his business that would have access to the portal. So what we could do here is we could add a new individual. This is now I'm like the customer, right? So I can put in somebody's name and their details here. Notice that there's an ID card here and then the ID number. Why is that? Because when the contractor walks into the store and he wants to prove that he is who he is, we know what his ID number is, right? So we can establish, yeah, that's really him. Because you'll notice there's some settings, right? Do they have admin access to the portal? Because if they do, that means they can create other users and delete users and things like that. Can they view jobs, yes or no? What types of jobs? And then there's a section where you can actually limit access to individuals only to certain jobs. So if you have a contractor that only is working on job 1 and 10, they would only see the transactions relevant to those 2 jobs and not any others. Okay? Do they access the portal? Yes, no. So they said no, they wouldn't even be able to log into the portal, but they're recorded as a user because if they show up in the store to pick up goods, we know that they're okay to pick up the goods, right? And then view financial information, so if you set that to no, then they wouldn't see any of the dollars in there. They wouldn't see the aging dollars and what we owe and things like that. So this is just an example. It's a fairly sophisticated one, but basically any information that you have in your backend system, you now have the ability through the CDS, for example, by integrating that and using the portal to push data and make it visible to the customers. This is fairly straightforward because there's no the interaction at the customer level is fairly limited. It's mainly a read portal, okay? But it doesn't have to be like that. I'll walk you through another scenario here, and it's a slide deck I have because to set up that environment it would be very impractical, but it's another demo of how we can use a portal, you know, with the CDS and with Dynamics 365 specifically to accomplish some things around case management. So this is going to be an example of it's a customer. We're going to deal with 3 different scenarios. One, we're going to start from the customer's perspective of logging into a portal and interacting from a customer service perspective, more like a case management, knowledge management type of scenario. Then we're going to switch gears a little later in the presentation and look at it from the service side, right? So the person who's providing the support now will show you what interface they get to see and how they interact with the customer. And in the final stage, they're going to escalate this case because they're unable to resolve it. And then we'll show you a different way that that they can look at the data from the escalation standpoint. Okay, so here's just an example of a portal. You'll see it looks somewhat similar to the one we just looked at, right? Because one of the things you have to, there's quite a bit of flexibility in look and feel. I mean, you can change the colors, you can change the pictures, but it's not like you can do absolutely everything. You know, the portal, one of the I guess trade-offs of using something like Power Apps in this portal is, I mean, it's fairly cost-effective. You can manage a lot of it yourself. But it's not like, you can't do absolutely anything with it. You have to operate within certain parameters that they provide. So that's why you'll see these different portals, you can change colors. There's a fair amount of leeway you can do, but it's kind of gonna look the way it looks, right? That's the trade-off you make. But it means you can deploy these things very, very efficiently. So here we're acting as Doug Corwin. He's logged into this portal. He's seeing a list of his open cases right now, right? And then it's saying that this scenario is one where he's using a printer, right? Like a printer, a printer that for printing reports and things like that. And he's trying to troubleshoot issues he's having with the printer on the website. So he's already submitted some cases. You can see there the printer heads he's having problems with the printer heads, and he's trying to resolve that. It says here he's got some older ink cartridges, and he's trying to figure out if he can still use them or not. Okay, so you can see here there's a search capability in there. So one of the things that Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement has is a knowledge base or knowledge management. So it will actually track, you can keep track of KBs, knowledge base articles in there, and then the customer now can use the portal to go search for that, search the knowledge base to see if there's articles in there that they can self-help, right? So he's going to go in and look at something. So he's saying here, ink shelf life, right? So he found an article, it's here, shelf life of whatever these M-class cartridges. So he can open that up and he can read the article. Great, okay? Now one of the things that we also provide is the ability to, he can comment on the content of this knowledge base, right? So we can capture feedback from the users, and I don't know if you've ever used, a support portal maybe for one of the software or something that you're using internally. You go and you read a support incident or a knowledge base article, and it gives you the ability to give you feedback, like this article sucks, fix it. Or that was very helpful, but usually you don't get those ones, right? So at least you can capture that feedback from your customer, what works and what doesn't. So he's going to actually submit some feedback here. Okay, so he adds a comment at the bottom and he just says, great article. Yeah, that's the one you never get. Okay, so he submits that. Great. Okay, so the next thing he wants to do is he's actually pretty involved in the community here, so he wants to go and he has some advice that he wants to leave in the forum. So he's gonna go to the forum, and you can see there's different discussion groups in there, and he picks the updates and how-tos, and he decides that he's going to create a thread. Right, so he gives it here, tips to aligning your printer heads, because he's had some experience with this, so he's just saying, hey, make sure if you're trying to do this, you can barely read this. Here, move the print head all the way to the left before alignment. Okay, so some advice for the community. And then he posts that, great. Okay. Now the next thing is he has an issue that he needs to resolve with his printer. So he's gonna search the knowledge base to see if it has any knowledge base articles in there about servicing this 3D printer he has. Okay, so he's doing some searching. He finds an article, right? It gives you some advice on how to fix this automatically. It's kind of walking him through what he needs to do here. But he's frustrated a little bit, so these articles aren't really solving his problem. So he's going to open a case now. He's going to create a case. So he does that, gives it a title, right? Now, as he puts the title in, you notice it's coming up with some suggestions, right? Saying, well, based on this title, we have these knowledge-based articles that may apply. He's already gone and searched those, so he's not gonna do that. He goes in and submits a problem, and then he picks the subject, hardware, and then he types in whatever he wants here. Okay, still not working, not very detailed, but it's a demo. Okay, then you notice there was an upload there, so he could have uploaded documents down there as well. Okay, so now he submits a support case, and it would show up in his list, right? Okay, and it would show up as in progress, like along with the rest of them. Okay, great. So he submitted the case, maybe he waits a while, he's annoyed, he doesn't get a response, so he's now going to initiate the chat. So I don't know if you saw earlier, but there was a little, see that little bar on the right there? Is the chat. So that's part of D365 customer engagement functionality. They have a chat, there's a chat, there's a chat tool right within in the product that you can leverage. And you can even create bots and embed them in the chat, right? So I don't know, anybody here not know what a bot is? Not everybody knows what a bot is, right? So it's an automated, it's artificial intelligence. It's like a little bit of automated functionality that's going to converse with the customer and try to help solve their problem, right? So it's good for solving common issues or answering common questions without needing a person to do it. So the first thing that happens when he gets in here and he starts conversing is he's actually talking to a bot. It's not a real person. Okay? So he's entered some stuff here, and it even tells him, I'm a service bot, how can I help you today? Right? So in here he's got a question about his printer. And it's the next question, what's the model number? Right? So again, still the bot, so it knows that question. That's a pretty common question. You can see there, right? And literally how it works, these bots, is it has a database of these questions. You can actually create that database of questions, and then what you do is you lay out all the responses. You can do it all in a Word document. You upload that, and it actually builds the bot for you. So you don't need, again, you can create these bots with no technical experience. All right. So he gives us the model number, and it says, all right, so it's given in the comments as well, I've got these knowledge-based articles or whatever, which he's already looked at, right? So he says, well, this is frustrating. Now, the bot realizes that he's annoyed, right? So what he does, and in this case, that's actually pretty mild language, but he could have used something a little more rough there. And the bot, realizing that he's frustrated though, is going to escalate it to a live agent. So the bot now realizes that the bot is like, I'm going to escalate because he's pissed off. So somebody internally now is going to get this request. So here's where we switch gears, right? We're going to be the customer service rep who is getting the request from the bot to help service the client. So what they're doing is they're operating in the Dynamics 365 environment. You can see this is the interface. I'm at a dashboard right now. Now, the difference between D365 customer engagement and Power Apps, it's not one of technology, it's one of it's D365 has a whole bunch of stuff already in there that you would use, but the platform for modifying and whatever is it's the same. It is a Power App actually. It's just a very sophisticated one that's all pre-configured for you. So the rep now, it gets prompted, and it brings up the chat window that Doug initiated on the right. And on the left, you can see that it's actually brought up all of the information about Doug and what Doug has been doing. So if you look here, it says where he's from. It says some chat details here. And then if you look below, it has his navigation history. So I can even see what Doug went and looked at. So now I can start to respond to Doug. So now there's a human being actually typing this stuff in. Okay. So on the left, if he clicks on navigation history, I can see everywhere Doug went and looked at. Why would I want to see that? Well, now I know, so I'm not going to recommend things that Doug's already looked at, right? Doug already looked at that article, so he doesn't want to hear me recommend that you look at this knowledge base article. So it just allows me to provide better service to the customer by knowing what he's already done. Okay. Now, the case, so now I've gone to the case that Doug has opened with us. You'll notice at the top there's these stages, these green boxes, where it says identify, qualify, research, resolve. So those are actual steps, or what we call a business process flow, to resolve the case. Those are just examples. Whatever your particular law, whatever your flow is for how you resolve the case is what how you would construct that. So your steps may be completely different, right? But the idea is you can define what the steps are to resolve certain scenarios, and it's actually conditional as well. So for example, if I'm in step one, there might be fields in there where I'm capturing data, and depending on what I enter into those fields, it could completely change the rest of the steps, right? So if it's this type of problem, then I have these 3 steps to go through before I can do anything else. If it's a different type of problem, it's much quicker, right? So that business process flow is logically determined, and it's completely configurable to suit your particular needs. So in this case, he's looking at the case, it starts in that identify stage, and then what he can do is he's going to move it to the qualify stage. Okay, and then at that particular stage, there's some requirements. Now the reason when he moves it there, what happens is it will check the customer's service level agreement to see if this customer is entitled to any special treatment, right? This customer happens to have an open support plan. So they're paying for support. So that means that I'm not going to charge them, but we're just going to provide the support. So the system knows that. So when it goes there, it would checks the customers. They have an open support, and they're entitled to service with certain SLAs. Okay, so the rep here, he replies, thanks to contact me, he said, give me some time to look it over, so we did that. And then now he's asking him if he performed a factory reset. Okay? So after chatting with Doug a little bit, he figures that probably the best way is to co-browse and help Doug resolve his problem directly. So what he does is he initiates a co-browsing session, or he asks first, and then he's going to initiate a co-browse session. So you'll notice at the top of the agent session to the right of Doug Corwin, there's a blue co-browse button. There's an icon there, right here. This guy. Okay. So what that allows them to do is to share a screen, effectively, the browser screen. There's the button there. So now they're both looking at the same screen. Okay? So what he does is he directs them to a particular, he just happens to open this thing because he's asking them to do a factory reset, and he can actually draw right on the screen, say, here, this is what you need to do, right? You need to push these two buttons at the same time, hold them, and then push this other button, and then that'll do a factory reset. So he's basically using visual representations to help guide the customer through resolving his issue. Okay? So he gives them that explanation, hold it for 5 seconds. So I guess he tries that, and then that doesn't get resolved. So what's he saying here? Does that help? And his answer is no, it doesn't help. Okay. So, so he realizes that he's out of his depth now, right? He's tried the basic stuff here, reset it, reboot, see if that solves the problem. Didn't solve it, so he's going to escalate it. Okay. So when she does that, she's going to want to enter some information into here, so the next support rep has some data to work with. So she comes into the posts here and she enters some information. Well, one thing is she escalates the case. So you'll notice that in the there's a place in there where she'll go say escalated to yes. Okay, and then she's going to go in and put some information in here. Right. So she goes to the tab. In a case, and it's just an example, is the customer service rep is interacting by voice. So they're not typing, they're talking to the computer. Okay. So now they were prompted about this customer as a dissatisfied customer, right, who were unable to resolve their problem. And then now they're going to take them through a few steps to see what they can do. So you'll notice at the top left there, under Doug Corwin, there's like a little button there, right here, I think. It's what, here, right? So they select that, so they're moving over there, and then we can see what it's doing is it's actually prompting them with a call script, right? So the idea here is that you're providing guidance to your customer service people around what they should be saying to the customer. Okay? Maybe not so relevant to a very experienced customer service rep, but if you have new people that have started, right, there's some tips there that can at least help guide with their how they're going to communicate with the customer. Okay? So this could be customized for different purposes to ensure that there's a quality experience for the customer. And you can see here there's more things, so different scripts that are available. So he picks this one, verify customer information, they want that too, okay? And then what it will do is it'll walk them through that stuff, okay? So looking at what their active articles are. He's doing a search here to see if there's any resolution for that stuff. So he doesn't have an immediate solution to the customer's problems. I think what the rep previously recommended is that they were just going to replace the printer. But he doesn't want, he wants to do something to help alleviate the customer's frustration. So what he does is he's going to offer him a discount code. Okay, so you can see here, he's creating a new email right from within here. So this email will show up in his Outlook eventually as well. But he's going to create the email, and then he's going to send it to Doug. And then here, what he's going to do is provide a discount code. Oh, over here. So this was the chat, right? Printer's still not working. So there's the case details there. So he's going to click there. Is that what? no, sorry. He went back, he went here. We were over here in the email, and then we went back to printer still not working. Okay, so it went back to the case details. Okay, so, and then he's, where it says posts. So he's just making a note that he's sending a discount code to the customer. And then you could see that he finished here. Now, I would argue that it's not necessarily resolved, but it's just an example, right? So that brings to the end of that's the end of the process that they went through. I mean, it hasn't resolved his problem. His printer actually needs to be replaced. That was the resolution that was recommended. But you can see how, through different scenarios, we were able to use D365 portals, chat, bots, and you know, the case object in there to help walk through that scenario and resolve this for the customer. Any questions? Okay.